So I'm really happy to have you too. It seems like we've been planning this for a while, but I didn't think it was going to really happen. Terry's been bugging me for a long time, but that's okay. I'm glad it's happening. I'm really glad it's happening. And tomorrow night we have the In Between series, which we do every month, a monthly music series, which John King always films or video. And we have a band called Cortex, a jazz quartet from Norway. And it's free, and they're incredible. And they were brought in by the Civic Minded Five, who does a lot of the White House shows over at the Orlando's White House. And I'm actually one of the five. But they're being paid by the group, so they're phenomenal. So if you can get out here at 7 o'clock tomorrow. And Thursday I have a show called Idiosyncratic Paths. So I was a little distracted lately, so a lot's been going on. And there's 5 artists. The opens Thursday 6 to 9. So come on out. But that's all I wanted to say. And if you want to give money to the Downtown Arts District, just talk to me afterwards, or Barbara downstairs. We'll take it. Terry will take money too.
I'm Don. Did I get this about the right height? Yeah, okay. I'm Don Stap. I'm in the English department, creative writing faculty at UCF, and we'll see how that goes. I usually spill at least one every semester in the class. I'm going to try to keep the introductions fairly short. Oh, I want to say first, though, if you haven't done it, if you've sort of forgotten, turn your cell phone off. That'd be a good idea. So you're not. I had to remind myself just a few minutes ago. I've known Kelle Groom for, I think, 29 years. I knew she would like this opening. And she took about the third year I was at UCF, she took an essay writing course from me. She failed it. Badly. She didn't show up for less than half the classes and did about half the assignments, I think. That was a previous incarnation of Kelle, and which changed a couple of years later and is the Kelle we all know and love now. And but I remember this distinctly in that class. The 2 essays she turned in, about every other paragraph, there was this just flash of brilliance with the language. I mean, I'm reading along, wow, that's really good. She's talented. And, I don't know where talent comes from, but you don't get it easily. I thought she had she had the real thing. And so I was real happy to see her show up in a poetry workshop a couple of years later, a totally different person, and write some wonderful poems for that class. And then she took classes from me on and off for over 20 years. Got her BA at UCF and her MA, which was before we had an MFA, and then came back to get her MFA. And I was her advisor on that MFA thesis. So I'd like to say that, I'd like to take credit for the fact that she's such a first-rate poet because of all the work she did with me and of how much I taught her in all those poetry classes she took over the years. I don't think she would know much about poetry at all if it hadn't been for those classes she took with me. I would like to say that. Of course, it's not true. I had very little to do with it. Kelly had a gift, and she really worked hard year after year after year, and got better and better and better. I was just amazed. By the time she got to her MFA, I mean, as a thesis advisor for an MFA with students, you usually work with them fairly closely and go over the poems that they're turning into you and talk about, what needs improvement, what poems just aren't going to work because they're not really good enough. My approach with Kelly was to stay the hell out of her way. Really. Just to stay out of her way entirely and let her write. She'd already published 2 books, which were very good. And she had a publisher for the thesis before it was finished. So let me just tell you a little bit. I'm going to keep this brief. There's a long list for both readers of things they've done. Kelly's published individual poems in American Poetry Review, Best American Poetry, The New Yorker, New York Times, Plowshares, and Poetry, among dozens of others. I mean, I'm naming the major ones there. In 2014, she received a fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts, which is hard to get. They're very difficult to get. There's only one person in our department in creative writing who has one. She's published at this point 4 books, 5 books. She has a new book out, 4 books of poetry. The first one in 2004 was called Underwater City. Again, a good book. They're all great books. And a couple years after that, one called Luckily. And then the MFA thesis became a book called 5 Kingdoms, which is my favorite of those 3, and only perhaps because I have not read the new one yet. It just came out recently. It's called Spill, and that's over there for sale. Are there others of yours for sale there? Okay, but so pay double for whatever the cost is there for if you're going to buy a book from Kelly, and getting it signed will only cost $10 if she signs it for you. She also published a memoir called I Wore the Ocean in the Shape of a Girl. And when I knew she was working on it over the years, but I never saw any bits and pieces of it at all. And when I took it over the summer back to Michigan with me, where I spend parts of my summers usually, and read it there. And I started reading it, and about 10 pages in, I thought, she can't do this. It's not going to work for the entire book. It's just impossible. What she was doing was really unusual, the way it was written. And I just thought, this is not going to last. It's going to fall apart at some point. It didn't. It's an extraordinary memoir. I mean, it's unlike any other memoir I've read in the last 20 years or so. If you're at all interested in memoir, you have to read this book. It's just stunning the way what she does with it. And I'll end by reading one thing, comment on her work by Tony Hoagland, who's one of the major poets of our time. This is on the back of, I've kind of forgotten which book. I think it's Luckily, isn't it? No, it's not. It's 5 Kingdoms. Yeah, okay, that's the one I couldn't find while I was on my way here tonight, this afternoon. It says, Kelle Groom's poems are like underwater songs, sung from the submerged continent of inner life. The life we don't often expose to the outer world, the one we don't speak of. They ought to bemuse slightly sad knowledge of lived life, but mainly these poems come from a muse of soulfulness. They are tender-minded. They balance honesty with perceptiveness of others, which is the true sign of tenderness. They are wry, artful, sad, loving, and moving, a true pleasure. Tony Hilgren does not write a lot of comments for people's books. You get something as remarkable as that, you're going to be in good hands. Kelly's a wonderful poet. I'm very happy to introduce her. Kelle Groom.
Oh, thank you so much. The most beautiful introduction I've ever had. Thank you. And, I'm so grateful to Don and to Judith and Kathleen and UCF for making a place for me to become a writer. Are you okay? So thank you so much for being here. Thank you to Patrick for hosting us in this beautiful space. Thank you to Don for that amazing introduction. I'm thrilled to be reading with Terry Ann Thaxton to celebrate her new book. I've loved her poems since we were undergraduates at UCF, so really happy to be here. So I'm going to be reading from Spill, from the new book. And this book is mostly a collection of love poems of various kinds. And I now have to wear glasses to read them to you. So. What? Oh, sorry. I have to put the glasses to see. 34. So I live in Provincetown now. I lived in Orlando and New Smyrna and Winter Park for 25 years. I live in Provincetown now, and at the tip of Cape Cod, my favorite place to walk is called Hatches Harbor. So it's, Provincetown is the end of Cape Cod, and Hatches Harbor is really very close to the very end, and it's pools and dunes and isolated but really beautiful. In the 1800s, there was a settlement there, and it was named Helltown. Helltown. We'd heard burning paper lanterns would rise at night. So we walked down to the beach, dunes above us, but only one appeared, a floating fire in the sky, first used in China to call for help when surrounded by the enemy. Brian had the universe on his phone, an app with every star. In that darkness, we bent our heads trying to see. In summer, tourists ask about the long, low shape on the horizon, like a sleeping, headless body. Could it be Stellwagen Bank out there where the whales go? No, Liz said, laughing. It's the great island of Plymouth. Really, just the arm of the Cape, rounding across from us here at its fingertip. Helltown is the old name for the dunes and pools where I walk, a settlement named for the helling that went on there. November now, dunes still green, tide line a path of stones to walk instead of sinking sand. Tentacled heads strangle heavy rocks, the size and weight of hearts, life inside. Follow the bird feet arrows. I found the red crown before the election. The day he won, it disappeared. I couldn't find a bone, a speck, as if something ate it whole. The seagulls had seemed to want it, 3 nearby, 4th a guard. One gull lifted the bloody head in its beak, dropped it. The red crown had been near the dunes, behind a tree torn up by the roots, washed ashore, spiny, skull scarlet as if painted. A seagull pulled the heavy mouth, let it bounce like rubber. A buoy, I thought at first, a rake for the sea, nautical teeth. I dreamed of my red dictionary, the word in there, dreamed a crown of snakes on my head, having to stand still, wait, dreamed of counting people, making sure everyone was counted. I knew I'd need surgery to fit them all inside my body. For several years, I taught at Aspect, which was, I'm not sure if it's still there. Not there, okay. An international language school that was at UCF. Noel taught there, and Bethany, and Terry. Oh my gosh, like 7 people in this room. Okay. So this poem is from one of my classes. Second language. My first summer as a teacher in an international language school, the Croatian students dressed me in white, a wedding dress. Eva and Jane insisting I play the runway game in the portable classroom. The purpose was vocabulary building. One student acts as model, walking the stage, while another is the announcer, describing the outfit for the crowd. But they howled so loudly at my modeling, I couldn't hear the details of my dress, plucked a cathedral train, the soft hand of chiffon, though by then I wasn't sure they were even speaking English, doubled over, hysterical, hair sweeping the floor, the students next door giving up on their lesson, joining us with their teacher who I had loved once and wished that I could marry. The girls, like fairy godmothers, intuit this, gowning me. Their own cities singed from war, fields and villages mined. At the mosaic table in a coffee house, I learned to say I love you in Croatian, volim te. We said it in every language we remembered, laughing, because it's always the third phrase you want to know. Hello, goodbye, I love you. Their imaginary dress fell over my hair like a wish sweeping winter from another country, as if they could bequeath me love, like that white dot, the moon. Suicides abandoned in the trees, the sullen blowing bubbles in the mud. Incurable. 12. An open door is an invitation. Spirit, if you don't have land, what are you? What was my cove before the door of my throat? I kept breaking irreplaceable things. One night, the front door, hinges rusted by salt and age, detached, opened into my arms like the lid of a coffin or a body I could barely hold, had to lay down on the deck. The title of the book comes from this poem, The Lost Museum. All my life, stars falling on cars, the laundry on the line, stars in my hair, open mouth, and in my chest, a massive celestial body. How is it possible to feel you inside? The Lost Museum is full of buildings. Some still stand. It's not their non-existence that makes them lost, but their state of ruin. Naked men are reconstructed. Sometimes you can find the lost on a coin. You won't find anyone inside your house, the postmistress said. George de la Tour, who lived quietly at home, kept painting the Magdalene and 2 engravings, though only one survives. At a table in long hair, night dress, dark mesh on her hands like gloves, veiling her neck and mouth, skull where she rests her fingertips. It is so quiet in her room, smoke signals from a candle. Nothing in the mirror except reflected bone. She has that kind of sleek, thin horse's hair I've always loved, strand by smooth strand pulled back from her face to rest on her shoulder, swing when she moves. What can we do but love who we love, even if you won't find them in our houses? If someone must saw open my chest, I want all this light to be what spills out. Goodbye to A. Someone has to blue metal for the gunmaker, blue the gown worn by those imprisoned, licensed to beg. Goodbye to abdicate, to abode, chunky heels, crossing wood floors at 3 a.m., doors slam hard behind a woman who wants a cigarette. Goodbye cigarette smoke, rising through heating vents to coat my bed. Goodbye abroad, fear of anyone traveling, planes. Goodbye absence, withholding myself from you. Bye to abstention, my sugared hair sticky with coconut and jojoba, angel food cake. Goodbye angel food cake, which is my second favorite, cake of Cape Cod, the special pan of 5 years old, bumpy browned top, soft white inside, still strangely cool. Cake my mother made, though she taught first grade every day. Goodbye Icarus, blue spider-like might. Goodbye acetate of Halloween costumes and flammable dresses of no give and cardboard shine. Acker, the current in the sea. How can I say goodbye to you? The only way around is through. The drunk forget they're tired until they drop, talking without pause. Their constant low TV in the background makes me feel hospitalized. Start with a dawn, which after all contains my middle name, almost my first, my father's choice, Aurora. He said, if you want to see yourself, just watch the sun come up. How could such a thing still be true? Maybe imagine her, a girl unnamed, emerald of fairy tales and violets, another sky. This next poem I wrote, I always loved how Merwin and other poets would write poems for their birthdays. So I wrote this on the eve of my 42nd birthday. And it takes place on a walk around Lake Ivanhoe in College Park. 42. Goodbye, 42. 10 more hours in another life with sleeping children, a man willing to drive, all the blue stars being born when I died years ago, when I felt the inside of the way out, and it pulled me like a uterine contraction. One house is being demolished, the door always open, skimmed pieces in a green dumpster on the lawn, in spray paint, a big 21, the age I died, saying goodbye, goodbye black on the front wall, among the meticulous rich homes done like nails, too green grass, filling the lake with chemicals, magnolias, roses, yellow pink, red hybrid, and I wonder why they don't take a wrecking ball to it, but it must be scavenged first, I think, shadows inside, sawing. When I breathed again, it was my extra life. I could do anything. So why did I agree to so much paperwork when the noise from the microwave came from the Big Bang itself, when I was originally the same place, the fourth heaven, heavier with the elements of stars, water, the gift of comets, the sun born from a cloud that lives in atoms deep inside us, near the lava, and before that, we were all space. When someone tells a story and I settle in, a brightness grows around like a halo, as if in quiet telling the soul drifts beyond, shimmering the drinking tree, the lavatory house with porta potty at the curb over pink scent, the whooping peacock, 7 to 10 words to live, all the tops spinning, the strength you were given with a child in your arms will never let go. I had many jobs in Orlando, and I have a lot of poems that I've written about those jobs. This one takes place in Orlando at the Coalition for the Homeless. So I was their director of grants for 3 years. The Face of Jesus. Page 31. I was thinking about why souls have bodies. What can a body do that a soul can't? And about the Amish or Mennonites, the ones whose children were so sick with the same disease that struck generation after generation, until finally one doctor figured out how to help them. But while he was figuring, he asked them about the disease and their kids, and the people said that they believed the children had been sent to help them better learn to love, which lifted me out of my own body for a moment. Reminded me of when a church responded to my request for money for some of the homeless people in my town. I opened their response, sitting in my closet office with tiny bugs trying to drink the water out of my eyes, with a small oblong window in my door, like on the doors of the insane, the impounded, so someone can see in to be sure the one inside hasn't hung herself, but small enough that she can only see the outside world as the size of an envelope. When I opened the church letter and read it, I was so surprised that they thanked me for being the face of Jesus. I thought, how can I be the face of Jesus? I'm not even that nice. And I'd certainly had many unkind thoughts about my coworkers just that morning, especially about the woman built like a truck who was always trying to run me down. But though it seemed an over-the-top thing to say, like naming me Pope or Cardinal, I realized that a spirit would need hands to touch someone, and that the person who has those hands and that body can be flawed and sick and crazy, selfish and withdrawn and sad, and still be an instrument of love. Like when a musician gave up on teaching me to play Summertime and simply laid his hands on top of mine, banged my fingers into keys. So years ago, I took a poetry and translation class from Judith Hemschmeyer at UCF. And one of the poems that I looked at was a Paul Eluard poem. And I took there were 2 lines in it that I decided I would make a repeating form. And another line from his poem that I would use as a refrain. And then I created this as an exercise to kind of, fill in the blank, and forgot about it for 10 years. And so then in Provincetown, I found it. It was summer, it was very busy, there's no air conditioning, you have the windows open, the town is full. It was so noisy, and I thought, I can't write. But I found this exercise, and I wound up, what I heard around me became the poem. L'amoureuse, and the epigraph is Paul Eluard, translated by Samuel Beckett. She has the color of my eye, she has the body of my hand. She has the Kansas City of my open window, she has the halogen of my bent blinds, and her hair is in my hair. She has the fresh breeze of my borrowed flower sheets, she has the freestyle of my squeaky metal bed coils, she has the sonic boom of another's blood beneath me. She has any way you want it, that's the way you need it, outside her window in the summer dark, and her hair is in my hair. She has the breaking point of my hard plastic pink flip-flops. She has the hypnosis of my shuffle to the kitchen for coffee. She has the conversation of my black caterpillars in their fur coats, curling, uncurling by the door last winter. Hello, hello. She has the song and dance of my rage turned against the self, and her hair is in my hair. She has the touch and go of my fear of death by emotional starvation. She has Bachman-Turner Overdrive playing Taking Care of Business outside her window, and a man who says, we're going to mix it up. We're going to find a sixth person. We're going to get trashed, and her hair is in my hair. She has the Santa Ana of my sense of basic flaw and unlovability. She has the atavism of my narcissism, and her hair is in my hair. She has the jet lag of my pocketbook. She has the sonogram of my happiest childhood memories. She has the frailty of my recollection. She has the ultra-red, ultraviolet, ultrasonic, ultra-short, ultra-mundane, ultramontane, ululating ultimatum of my solitude, and her hair is in my hair. She has the totter of my Plymouth Rock. She has the touch of my waffle iron. She has the undersong of my sufficiency. She has the pockmark of my house cleaning, and her hair is in my hair. She has the howl of my duplicate, the soot of my headwork, the welt of my bra, the hatchback of my stupor, the suitcase of my figments, the breath of my parolee, the proof of my throttle, and her hair is in my hair. That was a really fun poem to write. So I have two more. This poem was written about a relative of mine who was the last surviving Wampanoag Indian in South Yarmouth, Massachusetts. Swerve. I think of the man who sat behind my grandmother's sister in church and told her the percentage of Indian in her blood, calling it out over the white pews. I wonder what made him want to count it like coins or a grade. I wish I could hear him now when I think of her saying that all the Wampanoag blood in her body would fit in one finger, discounting the percentage, it seemed. But why was she such a historian, tracing the genealogy of the last Wampanoag up to her own children, typing it all on see-through paper? Maybe like me, she felt a little self-conscious, caring about what we're made of, instead of simply being satisfied, dressing our bodies and driving them around. Maybe she felt shy for loving someone she'd never met. I mean, I do. I think of the knife cutting into flesh and the fork carrying it to your mouth. I always think of that, the scythe-like movement, single motion, a swerve. I think of my relative, the last Wampanoag in the town, walking the streets with $1 the town gave him. Even then, what would $1 buy? A finger of land, if an Indian could have bought land? I think of walking into the almshouse, the alms falling like figs from trees, something to gnaw on. I think of the first time of thanks, before it had a name, when it was just some relatives of mine keeping some relatives of yours alive through a cold winter, people stupid enough to take food from a graveyard, food meant for the dead. So this is the last poem. Have you seen the Thomas Crown Affair with Steve McQueen? Okay, good. Oh, and South Station, do you know South Station, the train station in Boston? Okay. South Station, 1968. Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway drove a red convertible in the dunes of the Cape, her eyelashes elaborate as wigs, her wigs big as braided boat rope. Characters appeared in little jukebox squares so you could see time taking place. The Thomas Crown Affair was McQueen's favorite movie, filmed in Boston, and the makers had asked the Navy for sailors to play extras. My dad was 25, and he'd raised his hand, joined up in his bright whites, getting on and off the train in South Station all day long behind a star. I look for him in 1968, Curly dark hair, more movie star than any actor. And I can't get a clear view, but he's there, to the right. Milky, tall, his hat a sail, located by something unseen, like sonar. Like the time he disappeared in the Cape Cod Bay, having forgotten the centerboard, and his boat went out to sea. My mother, in her long white dress, shaking before the blank water, voice rising, "Where is your father?" The tourist lolling on towels in the quiet that sinks down after loud noise. I walked into the ocean to find him, walked and walked as if it were a road, and out of the horizon line, my father appears right in front of me, boat roped around his chest, pulling it behind him like he is Steve McQueen. Thank you.
Directions about how fast how quickly I should do the introduction. I've met Kelly's father. If you'd told me that before I met him, are you kidding me? Steve McQueen's my favorite. Then if you saw a remake of that, the remake was, well, I didn't see it. Anyway, I'm a little off center by that. The first thing I'd like to take credit for, Terry Ann Thaxton, is her name. No one called her Terry Ann until she met me. And she publishes under that name, so I'll take credit for that. And that I'm serious, I'll take credit for. She's a fifth generation Floridian, which is pretty rare. She got her bachelor's degree at UCF and her master's at UCF, and then went on to Vermont College and got her MFA there. She's published poems and prose, I should say, too, in the Missouri Review, where she won the Missouri Review Prize for essay, best essay. It's a long-standing and prestigious award. And the Connecticut Review, Comstock Review, Hayden's Ferry, West Branch, Tampa Review, Cimarron Review, Cold Mountain Review, and many, many others. She has published 3 books of poetry. This is really weird, this is really weird. Because what I want to say is, I've got 3 books too. They're not all poetry though. And anyway, some of you get the joke here, and some of you are, I'm sure, confounded by it. The first one was Getaway Girl, published in 2011. It won the Frederick Morgan Prize that year. And then The Terrible Wife came out in 2013, which won the Florida Book Award in a bronze medal. A book, by the way, that's badly titled. Another inside joke. And her third book of poems, which came out just recently, Mud Song, which won the T.S. Eliot Prize from Truman State Press. And one thing you should look at if you take a look at that book is the cover. The artwork is by her son. It's just spectacular. She also did a textbook called Creative Writing in the Community, a guide. And it's based on years and years and years of Terry working all over Orlando, teaching, using poetry to give a voice to people in underserved communities. Prisons, domestic violence shelters, treatment shelters, homeless shelters for battered women, nursing homes, all kinds of places. She started out a long time ago. And then she's taught in the last few years courses for her students to how to do that, and they found it very rewarding. It's the only book of its kind. Came out a couple years ago. Okay, I'm trying to cut it short. Let's see. I guess as you say, she's professor of English at UCF and is also the MFA director. The last thing down here, which I took off her website, says she lives near Orlando with her husband and their dog. I want to take exception with that as well. It should say, I think, to be honest, she lives near Orlando with her dog, and then in parentheses, and also her husband, which is kind of the order of things there. Though the dog Sky does love me as well. I had meant to type this out. It's like 6-point type. I think I can just read it. Read one thing, like the comment on Kelly's book by Tony Hoagland. Terry has one on, what one was it? Terrible Wife, by David Wojan, again, who really a great poet. His Hoagland generation, I think, too. Both a couple years younger than me. And Wojan as well does not write a lot of comments for people's books. Now, if I can read this. Terry Ann Thaxton's new poems are uncompromisingly tough self-reckonings, unsentimental but always vulnerable examinations of how the past invariably haunts us. About Richard Ellman labels the controlled seething for which this is just terrible here, sorry. For which endures most I'm wearing glasses that are prescription. They're also marvelously inventive in their ability to let the memories of Eros morph into occasion for exorcisms, and to it's ridiculous, to allow straightforward narrative to suddenly, I can't believe this, to suddenly swerve toward the surreal. In other words, these are durable, always impassioned poems of a grown woman, and the sort of poetry that American verse very much needs these days. Terry Ann Thaxton.
Thank you. First, I'll say I know that we got started late, so I won't be offended if you have to leave during my reading. I really won't. Which is different than what Ann Sexton used to say when she got up to read, which was, I'm going to read some poems and smoke cigarettes, and if you don't like it, you can leave. And her martini, right. Right. First, I wanted to, wait. Where did my little note go? Where did my note go? Oh, here you go. But thank you all so much for coming this afternoon. It really means a lot to me. Every person who's here is really special to me, and I really appreciate it, your attending. And also to read with my dear sister poet, Kelle Groom. We've put up with each other over the years. Ebbs and flows, you know how those go. But we dearly love each other and adore each other's poems so much. And the introduction, well, one person crying is enough. And thanks so much to John King for, I think he's videotaping this. I don't know. That's kind of scary. And also very much thanks to Pat Green for hosting us, for having us here. It means a lot. And I can't tell you, I don't know, Eddie Pipkin, shout out to you. Man, Eddie Pipkin. We did undergrad together. Wow. Way back in the day. So I'm going to read some historical poems. I'm going to start with, is the sound okay first? Okay. I'm going to start with a prose poem, and this one I'm reading for Brenda Penato, my new colleague. It's a prose poem, see? Might be flash nonfiction, I know, or flash fiction. It's not nonfiction. All right. I'm going to do, since I write a lot about Florida and Florida's history, I thought I'd first start way back before my ancestors arrived. With one of my ancestors describes her life living on the English countryside. There was no touch. We were discouraged from listening to cowbells, the wind, crickets, horses and buggies that passed on the road, or anything that would distract us from our required silence. We had only the tree and the countryside to call home. There was no touch. The only bed, dangling from one of the branches, belonged to my brothers. As the girl, I was ordered to sleep on the ground beneath my father's green chair, which we had stolen from a cottage when its inhabitants spent a day in the village. The table where we ate seemed to have sprouted from the ground. I can't recall a time when it did not linger beneath the boys' beds. The table's 2 chairs, one for mother and one for father, I tucked under the table after we ate. There was no touch. Meals were poppies, Maltese cross, bilberry, hardened earth. For dessert, as the girl, I ate a cow patty. My brothers and I sat under the lamp sometimes to watch the hills roll away while mother and father slumped in their chairs. There was no touch. Sometimes, after they'd fallen asleep, I'd climb above them, above the boy's cradle, above the chair in the crook of the tree, above the empty picture frames. I wanted to see where our tree ended and the rest of the world began. So I'm going to read most of the poems today from Mud Song, and the cover is by my son, and he's an artist and also a writer. The epigraph to the book I want to read, and it's from John James Audubon, who wrote it during his exploration of Florida, and he wrote this in 1831, which is between the time, which was after Florida became a U.S. territory and before it became a state. And before it became a U.S. territory, it was 2 Floridas, East Florida and West Florida. And the Swanee River divided the 2. So the Panhandle was one of the Floridas. And then the cock was the, well, whatever you want to call it, you know, the pickle was East Florida. All right, so it was the Floridas. And this is the epigraph. The general wilderness, the eternal labyrinths of waters and marshes, interlocked and apparently never-ending, the whole surrounded by interminable swamps. Here I am then in the Floridas, thought I. History of America. On the boat, page 2. I want to especially thank Judith Hemschmeyer for being here, my first poetry teacher. And she is the famed Judith Hemschmeyer. She's a famed poet and translator of Anna Akhmatova's poetry. And she's the first person who said, "You are going to grad school, aren't you?" I had never thought about it before. History of America. On the boat, the men drank whatever the women poured, while the women buoyed up the heads of sick children, and then they were peeling corn and potatoes rose from the earth. I never paid attention in school, didn't understand the purpose of history or science. Women sharpened knives, not knowing they could be used against them. There was a table, and probably not a turkey, which is something I learned only recently. And then some men fought with swords. It all started at a rock. Then some guy with white hair wrote out his hope for his neighbors, absent of a queen hovering over his bookshelf. There might have been women, too, who wanted to wear their dresses as short as I did when I was a young girl. But it wasn't until the 1800s when I started paying attention, and only because of a small cabin in the woods built by a man who wanted nothing to do with this country. There were women who hid words in their panties drawers, words not discovered until they were dead, like witches flying above a man ashamed of his own past. After the rock, our ancestors dispersed into the Wild West, where whores sprouted from behind rocks, and men, of course, had to pay to see breasts, and so guns were created to save our freedom. My 6th grade teacher taped the evolution poster to our classroom door, but only because, she said, the county forced her to. Otherwise, I would never have seen the parade of apes, the men following each other into history. So lately we've been having lots of rain, but there were years of drought, and Florida had its own fires. So this poem is titled Drought. Rain tempts the lonely throat of day, taunting each creakling leaf like a call girl wearing red pumps and stockings just outside the car window in a dream. The clothes in the dryer try to swap themselves for the men of her past. She knows the house is waiting. She tells herself she will go out tomorrow as the washing machine asks her again to reverse the clothes. But she throws dirty shirts into the rinse cycle. Only the pond behind the house is not serious, and she thinks of marching toward it, perhaps reaching a gray cloud, pulling the switch. Outside, moss hangs itself in trees like fresh dried laundry, and she recalls the switches her father ordered her to cut from the paper tree to spank her for being bad, for being a girl. Her hair curves into the drought. 20 wandering summers fall from trees, and inside one of the summers, a door opens. She grabs a man, says, "Dance with me." Those switches still hang in the trees, and she drags her ass back to the dishes. Bees hum carefully outside her window. The rain wishes she were not so desperate. She reminds herself to throw out history when she takes out the garbage. But each time, the saw palmettos snicker at her, and she never notices how many trees have been sacrificed. Thanks for mentioning the creative writing workshops in the community. And then I'm going to read my homeless shelter poem. Children without their own beds. At home, the woods are dense, tangled branches of scrub oak and saw palmettos. And beyond that, there are children without their own beds. Their eyes and hands line the hallway of the homeless shelter. I'm never sure where to stand, woodlands or marsh. But always it is like a dream, a waterfall unsure of its own destination. Rain stumbles across the pond, or is it a child roaming just above the ground where it is probably not safe enough to walk. I had thought today would be filled with walking, but the rain made its way back in time to soak my body, and I crawled toward my room, safe from water. If only I could take one of them into my arms. But I would rather take them all home, beyond this marsh where I stand, where herons, hawks, and ibis become my nightstand. The children have been taken away from what keeps us hidden from each other, a home. Sleep is my own bed floating below me, but for them, it is a matchbox that might catch fire any minute. If the crows are laughing, they are laughing at all of the empty rooms, the children with no stories. When I visit them at the shelter, they never ask me to stay or to go. I exist only when I'm standing in the same emptiness with them. After all, to them, my house is invisible. And even if I could show them the sunset as it turns to the color of hope, even though I might claim to be the opening in their fence, even though I tell their stories, it is only if someone begs to know them. Okay, now I'm going to read a poem for Kelly. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to tell. I forgot to turn it. My teacher is telling me to give her the page numbers, and I forgot. I'm feeling you can fail me. This is a poem from Getaway Girl, the first book that Kelly asked if I would read, and I like reading it. It's kind of fun. It's titled My Mother, the Missionary, and it's for my mother, whose name was Mary, 1927 to 1991. Jasmine bloomed, and mother tried to remember walking in woods behind her childhood house, picking honeysuckle, violets. She wanted, in the last year of her life, to remember the squirrels and rabbits, the birds and the crickets, even though years before she had given up trying to become a missionary. She married, instead, a man who gave her thunder and vacuum cleaner for 5 bedrooms, and a stove for cooking him sourdough bread, hot guava jelly, and 6 children. After he died, she waited for the door to open into wind through cottonwoods, and then, in the last year of her life, she wrote to her daughter, "It might even rain. If you are left behind, I remember you shut your infant eyes so tight." And then cancer swallowed her like a prayer in a thin white teacup. She had not imagined a room blue and white and rain outside the hospital. I am her first daughter. Tomorrow, I must take my shovel to her grave, pry open the lid of her coffin. I must be careful not to wrinkle the only dress she ever owned. I will buy 2 plane tickets, order apple juice and peanuts, and use all 3 seats. In New Guinea, I will steal a jeep, drive past the towns, out into the unknown villages, and climb to the mountaintop. I will tell the natives to get down on their knees, mother's bones, a clumsy wind chime in my arms. Okay. This is an instructional poem. Things to do in your 50s. I thought I'd be brave and read it because if you read the newspaper article, you know I'm well past 50. Things to do in your 50s. Bury your bones in the backyard and wear pricey cotton collars. Show your teeth when necessary. Refuse to open the door for anyone. Don't look back. Control panting to 30 minutes in public. If you must eat potato chips, lick them off the floor. Be proud of your nipples, even though they are more than visible. While watching the sky from the earth, raise your arms and legs and feel the grass scratch your back. Meditate, even when you're not alone. When others are watching TV, protect your space. Tongue your lover's face. Learn to say no, even if it comes out as a howl. Remember, you've chased enough snakes. You've done your fair share of sitting. You've waited long hours for a single touch. Eat grass when there's nothing else to do. Be the first to announce anything. A knock at the door, a lizard on the back porch, a friend disguised as a monster. Pay no attention to the love notes rattling in your head. Roll in shit, mud puddles, wet paint, sand, dead squirrels. Jump fences. Chase anything on wheels. Dig holes where you can bury what you need for later. Rope, frisbee, stuffed monkey, frozen bones, dead lizards, hope, tennis balls. Don't let anyone force you off the chase lounge. Imagine you are human. Okay, and I'm just going to read a couple more. Okay, read the last poem in the book. Oh, at the end, okay. Okay, will do. Sorry, now that made me lose, just frazzled, got me frazzled. Invisible week. Moss hangs from oak trees as if fall does not exist, as if trees are mirrors of previous years. Smoke quivers like damp hands closing over a stone. This week is a tired train. A spiderweb is the final mystery of the lamppost. 7 dark evenings and only the memory of wind drifts past the window. Here, private fingers and lips no longer place wishes upon the window, where a dog's tongue and breath linger on the pane, faint imprints of hope. Okay. I'm going to read 2 more. Just, heads up. Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. I like that poem. I was going to, but Brenda heard it yesterday. Mud Song. I found the hollowed out wind, a thin, unreadable sign, and for 3 hours I hiked the muddied path, bright palmettos, armadillo holes, dog shit. Each step was still a desperate rerun of childhood. I, the oldest girl, did not become a thin tugboat as predicted, floating along the horizon. Though I'll never again see my parents, their lives are nailed into mine. Like their little girl of silver, I wait for the call, still angry at my hands like pebbles in the kitchen sink. I caved into expectations, but never stopped asking for daisies or gardenias. I felt like a mournful twig. Here, I could start dying. My head falls onto the shag carpet of my teenage room. I walk as if I can no longer hear my parents. I know the value of mud on a dog's paw. I want to wake and disappear into the minutes where the crows fly. I want someone to leave me in the clouds and carry my gown across the night. Okay. Now 2 more. Can I read that one next to last? It's my reading. Terry reminds herself how to live. Wear a mood ring with the hope of understanding yourself. Take recyclables out only on weeks when you feel like it. And Jesus Christ, remember your name. Plant red sisters outside your window where the dog once trotted. Ignore phone calls from your sister and long-lost cousins you did not speak to as a child. Dream about the boy you liked in middle school, the one with dark hair and no smile. Leave your notebook with lists and lists of things to do in a public bathroom 1 hour from your house. Write checks to yourself for large amounts, but never cash them. After you've learned the names of all the dogs on your street, run alongside of their fence and dance with them. Buy 2 pair of glasses, one for downstairs and the other for upstairs. Believe in nothing. Not even the bricks you stacked outside 6 months ago for the garden walkway. Keep dried flowers close to you. Save a rock from every path you walk down. When your mother's photo stares at you from the basket, remind her that she is dead. Never sing in public. Never pay more than $4 for a slice of cake. Don't clean the house. Forget the gardenia you tried to grow in memory of your mother. Use the dirt from the pot for another, more willing plant. Remember the dog that lived next door looking at you from the low window, waiting for you to open the door and say her name. Okay, and this will be my last one. Okay. I liked reading that. Thanks for suggesting. Okay. Some women. Could you be seduced without those women who start storms, who fly above desks, who cling to wallpaper, those girls who arrange their hair 12 times each day as if a hairpin will save their necks? Some women have exceptional ways to note the scars they collected as girls. Some women locked their bodies away, as if a body could be a little wooden box sanded down and shellacked. Some women found this to be a better choice. Put a lid on that face. Look the other way. Are you a girl or a boy? Is there suicide in your fingers? Some women accumulate dog bites, while others are given acid for their faces, bruises for the empty pots on their cheeks. Some women are electric sockets. Some women are wings with skin. Some blush with fingers laced in glass. Did you get that memo? I scratch the napkin on my eyelid as if it is a blade of grass. I mouth words to a snake's fangs. Some women take heaven apart and disappear into a storm. Thank you very much. So thank you again so much for coming. We'll be happy to sign books and even sell them, and we'll take credit cards too. Cash or credit. Anyway, yeah, thanks so much for coming. Erin.